Hi, everyone, and welcome to our conversation on what does Jesus do for us. I'm Emily Bennington with the Circle of Atonement, and I'm here, as always, with Robert Perry. And today we are going to talk about what Jesus offers to do for us in the course as a partner on our spiritual journey. If you are watching or listening to this right now, it's probably no surprise to you that the course claims to be authored by Jesus. In the course itself, he speaks of his crucifixion, his resurrection, his mother, his disciples, and other aspects of his life as we know it. And in the clarification of terms, while he says that you can benefit from the course if you don't accept Jesus into your life, he also says that he would help you a little more if you share your joys and pains with him and leave them both to find the peace of God. So, what we're exploring today is how Jesus can help us. He says in numerous ways throughout the course that he wants to be the guide of our spiritual development. He wants to be our elder brother. And so, Robert and I are going to talk about what that means. And as I was preparing for today, I was thinking about how students often refer to the first line of A Course in Miracles as there is no order of difficulty in miracles. And it's actually the first line in Helen Schuckman's notebooks is what you see as the first line in the complete and annotated edition of A Course in Miracles now. And it's that you will see miracles through your hands, through me, the me being Jesus, of course. And so it's interesting to note that he wants to be part of our journey from the very beginning. He inserted himself into the very first sentence of the text. And so we're very excited to be talking about this today. Before we get into it, I do have an announcement to make, and it's that Robert and I are talking about Jesus today in part because here at the Circle, we are hosting a series of events for Holy Week, beginning on March 28th, which is Palm Sunday, and continuing through April 4th, which is, of course, Easter. And I could not be more excited about this. I have been trying to get something related to Easter on the Circle's calendar for years now, and we are finally doing it. And what we are doing is 5 days over Holy Week. So Palm Sunday, Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Easter Sunday. We are going to meet at 11 a.m. each day and talk about what the course has to say about these events. So if you want to join us, you are welcome to. All you have to do is visit circleofa.org/events, and you'll find all the details there. So many course students, and I am certainly in this camp, consider ourselves Christian, but don't consider ourselves Christian, rather, but we miss.
That was a surprise to hear.
Yeah, I know. I think I said that wrong. Don't consider ourselves Christian, but we miss the rituals and the traditions and the holidays that we grew up with. And so, what is so important and so meaningful about pulling this Holy Week series together is that hopefully we can start a course tradition around Easter that uses the teachings of the course itself. So, Robert, is there anything that you want to say about Holy Week before we get started?
No, just we're looking forward to it. It's very meaningful to both you and I, and it's going to be great to share that with others.
Yeah. Okay. So, as I mentioned, of course, our topic for today is what does Jesus do for us? But before we get into the specifics of that, it felt important to both of us to cover a couple of the general questions that tend to arise when it comes to him. And one of the stickiest misperceptions that many students have been taught, many course students have been taught, is that Jesus is a symbol of God's love here on earth, but he doesn't really exist. So at the end of our journey, he's going to disappear along with the Holy Spirit because symbols aren't ultimately real. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, all I can say is that is absolutely not how the Course talks about him ever. The Course talks about him in the Course as the same person who walked the earth It's just that now he has no body. He's completely awake. He's everywhere at once. He's working with all of us at once. But he is, in a very real sense, the same mind, the same Son of God, the same person that he was. He's just able to work with us from a non-physical place. So the Course consistently treats him as real. It asks us to regard our relationship with him as real. It explicitly asks for that. And it says that when this is all over, it says, you will be with him when time is over. So we'll be in heaven with him. And yes, in heaven, it's very different. But there still are multiple sons of God. They're just without bodies. They're all united. But there's still a sense in which Jesus will be that particular son of God, will be this particular son of God, etc.
Yeah, and I think that why students are so eager to believe that he could be a symbol is because it's hard to understand how he could be with all of us personally, and so personally as described in the Course. Like, how can he be everywhere at once? How can he be in all minds at once? So do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's some really good theoretical answers for that, but I'll begin by saying that, like on an emotional level, I couldn't really get past that for years and years and years. It's like, okay, so how does he know about me? Like, I believed he existed.
And doesn't he have bigger problems than mine, right? Like, I hear
Right.
that a lot too.
Yeah, yeah. So does he know my name, and why would he know? And what I finally realized, and this really helped, is if you don't think that an awakened being can be with everyone at once, then you don't understand our true nature. Our true nature is without limitation. It's not localized in, having one localized point of focus like we have right now. Like, we seem to be in this particular place and time. We think about one thing at a time. We look at one thing at a time. But that's not our real nature. That's an unnatural state. In our natural state, the Course says, we literally are unbounded. And so, for instance, Jesus says in I guess the Manual for Teachers, who transcends the body has transcended limitation. And what he's trying to say by that is, by getting beyond the body, he was no longer limited to one place. And so now, yes, according to the Course, he is with everyone 24/7, very actively and consciously. And what helps me with this is reports of near-death experiences where people sometimes experience a state approaching this. Like, I remember there was a story where this man was being driven to the hospital. He was dying in the car while his girlfriend was driving. And he said they passed by an apartment complex, and he said he knew the thoughts at once of everyone in that complex. And he said, that must be how God can hear everyone's prayers. I mean, our minds in their real state are just much bigger. And so if you don't think he can be with everyone at once, you don't get who he is or who we are.
Right, right. If you don't think he can be everywhere at once, then it's just a misunderstanding of the real nature, the true nature of reality itself. But
Right.
it's interesting that this is a whole separate topic that we don't have time to get into, but it is interesting in connection to what we're saying about Jesus here, that we are in our true form, unbound, eternal beings, and yet we still retain some sense of identity. And the same thing is true with Jesus. And so, last question, and the more general questions: how much do we really need him on our journey? I mean, why can't we just leap over into our unbounded state? Our own larger reality, and achieve the same objective that we're trying to do with him.
Yeah, I think the contemporary mood is like, well, I'm unbounded, I'm divine, I should just be able to, why do I
Right.
need
That's
him?
what I'm getting at. Like, we
Yeah,
can just sit and rest in pure awareness. Do we need him?
we should get past the age of Jesus or something. We've heard these things. uh think about it just on earth. If don't we all need people who are expert in particular areas? We go to doctors, we listen to teachers. We all we lean on mentors, on parents when we're smaller. We need each other. And from the course's standpoint, we especially need someone who actually has direct contact with heaven. There's a great line in the course where he says, no one on earth can know what heaven is or understand what its one creator really means. Yet we have witnesses. It is to them that wisdom should appeal. So if we're wise, we should say, look, I don't really know what God is. I don't know what reality is. Therefore, I have a need to lean on somebody who does, just as I have needs on earth to lean on somebody with medical expertise or legal expertise or whatever.
What's that great quote in the course where he says, I stand as a bridge between God and you? How does it go?
Yeah, very early in chapter 1, he's talking about how he bridges the distance between God and humanity.
Right.
So he can bring down to us, he says, he can draw down to us more than we can bring down to ourselves. Or I think I've reversed those. But anyway, the
We should
idea
have looked
is,
that up before, but I've always loved that idea that he can bridge that gap between God and us. And he even says that it's a distance that's too big for us to transcend otherwise without his help.
right. And I just think this is a principle in life. If you think you don't need anybody, you can't learn anything from anybody, that's blatant ego, right? Let's just accept we can't do this alone and we need to lean on each other.
Okay.
And he occupies a special place in that whole process.
We have so
So
much
much.
to cover, so we should probably move on. But
Yeah.
in preparing for our conversation today, you put together a super informal list of the ways in which Jesus says that he can help our journey in the course. And we're not sharing it. It's by no means incomplete, but it was like 2 pages, single space of all of these promises that he makes to us. We have pulled out 5 that we're going to talk about in the conversation today. But before we get into the specifics, can you just give us a sense of what you pulled in that list that you created?
Yeah, I'll just go through and read some random ones. He says that through his relationship with us, he can overcome the loneliness of the world that we experience. Well, you read this. He talks about us sharing our pains and joys with him, kind of treating him like a diary. Just openly talking about our lives and the drama that we're going through. He says more than once that he practices our workbook lessons with us, and he asks us even to take his hand in our meditations. You just mentioned the part about where he brings revelation, the experience of God, down to us. He talks about how he will go with us to look at the ego's dark cornerstone. So, like a journey into the unconscious where we finally unearth the cornerstone of the ego. He says he asks for our love, but only so that we will allow him to give his love to us. He says he saves for us all of our loving thoughts and acts in purified form. And those are just a few items on a very long list. And the list I made was, like you say, extremely incomplete.
And every single one of those we could take a day and explore. We're not going to talk about this today, but he saves our loving thoughts and he
Yeah.
purifies. It's just absolutely stunning.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all so just deeply meaningful and wonderful. But yeah, we have limited time.
And so personal and
Right.
so deeply personal.
And with Helen and Bill, I mean, you see him, he dealt with them very individually. It wasn't one size fits all. Bill had his particular issues and primary ego defenses. Helen had hers that were very different. He talked about people in their lives. He said, your normal taxi driver couldn't come today. I sent the other guy because he needed the money more.
Incredible. incredible how intimately he knows us.
Yeah.
So speaking of beautiful and incredible, throughout the course, Jesus's language is stunning. I mean, it's breathtaking. And so we couldn't get to read all of the passages where he speaks to how he can benefit our journey, but we did put together two paragraphs that I wanted to read to you. This is from Choose Once Again, the last section in the text, and a bit of it is peppered in for review 5 and some parts of chapter 8. But just listen to his language because it really is extraordinary. He says, "My brothers in salvation, do not fail to hear my voice and listen to my words. To your tired eyes, I bring a vision of a different world, so new and clean and fresh. You will forget the pain and sorrow that you saw before. Yet this vision, which you must share with everyone you see, for otherwise you will hold it not. To give this gift is how to make it yours. And God ordained in loving kindness that it be for you. This alone I need, that you will hear the words I speak and give them to the world. You are my voice, my eyes, my feet, my hands through which I save the world. My part in the atonement is not complete until you join it and give it away. As God sent me to you, so will I send you to others. And I will go to them with you so we can teach them peace and union." And the reason why I wanted to share that, number one, is just because it's amazing. But number two, it seems like all of the myriad of promises that he makes to us in terms of how he can help our journey, it's all meant to do the same thing. It's all meant to focus us so that we can go out and be express love in the world and be channels of the work that he started and continues to this day.
Yeah, as well as it's all geared towards our own inner transformation. And those two things are so linked. We transform and then we can go out to the world and carry his light, and then that comes back and reinforces the change in us.
Yeah. But he needs that change in us. So he wants to help facilitate that change in us so that we can go out and do his work in the world, that
Yeah,
we can be more loving.
there's so much of that.
Yeah. So again, we can't get to all of the promises that he makes. So we have picked 5. These are 5 that we found interesting, but also that will most likely be familiar to members of our Course Companions program. So the 5 that highlight the 5 things that Jesus does for us in our spiritual journey that we're highlighting today are: number 1, he wants to help us be a healing influence. 2, he wants to help speed us through the minutia of our lives so that we have more time for miracles. 3, he wants to step between us and our madness. 4, he wants to substitute for our ego. And 5, he wants to help us meditate. So we are going to spend the rest of our conversation just kind of picking apart these 5 things. So Robert, at the top of our list here is that Jesus wants to help us be a healing influence. And again, there's a million ways he says that he can do this, but one you and I love is highlighted in Cameo 3 in the back of the Complete and Annotated Edition of the course. And there Jesus talks about something he calls 3-way readiness. So do you want to tell us more about what that means?
Yeah, so there's a friend of Bill's that Helen can't stand named Wally, and Helen gets the impression that Wally is on her list. And Jesus, the list of people where they have thrown away their chalice, the chalice of atonement, and Helen is meant to give that chalice back to them. So she asks if Wally is on her list. And
And the
Jesus
chalice of
replies,
atonement, just to be clear, is forgiveness. Right. It sounds really fancy, but at the end of the day, it's forgiveness,
Well, I
right?
think it's like atonement, but atonement and forgiveness are, practically the exact same thing. So, yeah. Okay, so she asks if Wally's on her list, and Jesus says, whether he is or not depends on a three-way readiness. I am always ready. Your job is to take care of your readiness. His readiness is up to him. So you get the sense that, everyone's got their part in this. Everyone has to be ready. But Jesus is always ready.
Yeah, and I love this example because we we want to forgive. We want to have lives that are harmonious with those who are close to us. And yet we often struggle deeply in forgiving transgressions that we view are very significant and have hurt us deeply. And so what I love about this is that Jesus offers to be right in the middle with us. And our part in the three-way readiness is just purifying our own thinking so that we can be those clear channels for the expression of love. We can trust that the other person will know when they're ready to participate in this, but he's always ready. And there's just something really wonderful about knowing he's always ready to be part of our healing journeys with others.
And he's also not just helping us with our part of it, but he's monitoring how ready we are.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So he's clearly monitoring how ready Wally is, for instance.
Yeah, that's what I
Right.
was going to say. He's monitoring how ready someone else is, but he's also, how much do you think he's monitoring how ready we are?
Well, I'm sure all of it. Absolutely. And we'll see that with the meditation one that's coming up. But Helen said that she could tell Wally really wanted her forgiveness and she refused to give it. So, she's supposed to, in handing him his chalice, she's supposed to hand him something that he has a deep need for, that Jesus says he's thrown away. But she can't really hand it. She can forgive him privately, but there's something she's supposed to give him that she can't until the three-way readiness is all there.
So there's something in it that Jesus has to provide, right? It's not just that he's kind of waiting on the sidelines. It's like he's integrally part of this, and he is what makes it possible. Would you say that's accurate?
Well, I would assume so, because otherwise it would just be a two-way readiness, right? He's the one kind of in charge of the process, and as the one in charge, he's always ready, obviously ready to do something, right? It's the readiness to do, or the readiness is kind of irrelevant. It would just be a two-way thing at that point.
Two-way readiness is how we tend to stay stuck, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because if
Yeah.
it's just up to us, we tend to stagnate when it comes to forgiving things that have harmed us and hurt us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so the second on our list of what Jesus can do for us is truly remarkable. He wants to speed us through the minutia of our lives so that we have more time for miracles. And this has all kinds of implications for how we move through our day. So, what does it mean when Jesus says that he wants to help speed us through the minutia?
Okay. Well, this comes from a fascinating discourse that for some reason never left Helen's notebooks. And she did say that it was very threatening to her. Jesus said it was very threatening to her. And we've pulled it out and put it in the CE. And the basic idea is that she's supposed to be a miracle worker. Okay. She's supposed to be giving expressions of love to others under Jesus's direction. But we all have a lot of survival things to do, just normal, everyday trivia. In this case, she had to shop for a winter coat. And so, I'll just go ahead and read what he says here. Miracles depend on timing. And what that means basically is when people need you when they need you, right? If someone's in need, if you show up a week later, you're too late. Then he says, this is why you shouldn't waste time. I told you before that time would cease when it was no longer useful as a learning aid. There is a way of speeding you up, and that is by leaving more and more time for me so you can devote it to miracles. The reason I direct everything that is unimportant, that's the minutia, is because it is no way to waste your free will. If you insist on doing the trivial your way, you waste too much time and will on it. Will cannot be free if it is tied up in trivia. It never gets out. I will tell you exactly what to do in connection with everything that does not matter. That is not an area where choice should be invested. There's a better use for time. So the basic idea here is he wants to speed us through his guidance, speed us through the process of taking care of the trivia so we have time for the real stuff, which what we're really here for, which is to give miracles. And the example with the fur coat is he basically told her which store to go to right off the bat. It was a store that she didn't want to, that she wouldn't normally shop at. It was beneath her to shop there. But he said the coat that she wanted, given the characteristics she had laid out, she would find there, and it was at a lower price even. And so that saved her however much time she would have spent hunting around at different stores, and that extra time she would then be able to, if she consented, to use to give others miracles.
Yeah, and this may be a little out there for the taste of some of our watchers or listeners, but he even says that he can arrange external events to help us speed through our day so that we can get to what's most important, which is miracle working and i.e. expressing love.
Well, I mean, that's the course openly says that in different ways. One place he says, and this is kind of a slightly different thing, but he says, when you perform a miracle, I will arrange both time and space to adjust to it. And he says that in connection with a space problem in their workspace. So there was some kind of, he likened it to a storage problem that Bill was dealing with, and he chose a bookcase as the solution to that problem. And he's talking about the space problem, which is just clearly it's an ordinary problem that we all have, not enough space. And he basically
Clearly,
says,
look at my bookshelf.
yeah, right. He says, he'll take care of that if we focus on giving miracles. So it's very similar to what you're talking about.
Right. And again, this is an idea that if you just pick it a little off the surface, you can't help but being blown away by all that's there. So he wants to help rush us through the minutia of our day, the small details of our day, so that we have more time to devote to what he wants us to do, which is to be more loving and to bring more light into the world. And so that alone is just extraordinary, isn't it? Like, who's ever associated Jesus with that kind of activity?
Yeah, I don't know. But we can easily see the need for it, because think about how many times someone has needed you and you had to say, sorry, I'm just too busy. And then if you look at what you're busy with, oftentimes you're embroiled in little stuff that ideally you would get sped through.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would have time for that request.
Yeah. And in that quote you just read, where he says, the reason I direct everything that is unimportant is because it is no way to waste your free will. And so when he says, I direct everything, well, first of all, the conversation on free will's fascinating, but beyond the scope of this today. But I will direct everything that is unimportant. So it just gives you a sense of, again, just how much he's involved in not just the little details of our individual lives, but every detail in the whole world. Like, he's directing all the unimportant things in our lives and everyone else's lives, whether someone's ready to be forgiven, our capacity to forgive. It's just like, it's mind blowing when you really think about all that he's doing at any given time.
Well, and you get little hints of it. I mean, he's not given to any kind of boasting or showing off, but you get little hints that are slipped here and there. Like, for instance, one thing that I love is where he's talking about a report that was written to obtain funding for a place called the Shield Institute. And it was there to obtain funding from the National Institutes of Health, the NIH in the US. And what he says is, I could have obtained the funding myself, even if the report was substandard. He said, because I sit on the board of the NIH. And then he said, and I sit on your boards too at the medical center, presumably. And it's like, you just get a sense of that everywhereness occasionally.
Right. He's on the board of every nonprofit and the board of our own minds, et cetera, et cetera. We have to move on, but at the same time, I don't want to move on without asking the question that does tend to pop up when we talk about this in our Course Companions classes. And students have said, okay, well, I get that he's trying to move us through the minutia of life, but when I have really big things going on, really significant and meaningful events going on in my life, sometimes I can't hear him. And so why is that? Why is he trying to rush us through the small things and I can't tune into him for the big things? So what would you say to that?
Well, I mean, I think he's just trying to help with everything. Even here, he's saying, I'm trying to rush you through the small things so that I can direct you to give miracles, which in his mind, that is the big stuff. I think that my experience is that he absolutely wants to guide us and will guide us in everything, especially the big things, of course. It's just a matter, we have to do our part. You know, it's like we are ham radio operators with faulty equipment. We have to fix our equipment, fine tune it, learn how to use it so we can tune into those signals from him, which are always coming to us, whether we receive them or not. And so I've gotten crucial, and of course, tons of people have received crucial guidance for the big things. You hear stories about literally life-saving guidance. So let's not just think he's there for the trivial stuff. He's there for everything.
Right. Okay, so number 3 on our list is that Jesus wants to step between us and our madness. And this one is interesting because here he talks about wanting to enter into our relationships. So here again, we have that trio where it's not just you and another person, it's you, the other person, and Jesus, right?
Right. Good point. Yeah.
So what does he say about stepping between us and our madness?
Okay, well, the basic idea is that we all carry our own little team of shadow figures, as the Course calls them. And these are our own distorted, caricatured images of people from our past who didn't give us what we wanted. And probably top of the list is parents, right? So we have a mental
Who didn't
image.
give us the love that we wanted, right?
Yes, of course. That's always the most important thing we want, really. So the idea is we look for people who remind us of our shadow figures. Those are the people we're romantically attracted to, this says. This section has some really hard-hitting teachings. Then we project the shadow figure image onto the person in the present. And then basically we're trying to use the person in the present to get vengeance on our shadow figures, to say, look, this, they're loving me now. I've symbolically extracted the love from you now. Look how wrong you were. And it starts out, of course, where we think this person's going to save us from the shadow figures, but more and more we treat them like they're the shadow figure and we get vengeance on them. And that sets the stage for this passage. He says, my holy brother, I would enter into all your relationships and step between you and your fantasies. And the fantasies are the shadow figures we've put on the partner, right? He says, let my relationship to you be real to you. It's one of the many places where it's impossible to think he's asking us to relate to a metaphor, right?
Yeah.
And let me bring reality to your perception of your brothers. Now, what I love about that is he's saying, you're in this fantasy world. You're seeing a fantasy image projected onto your brother. So he says, let me enter into the relationship step between, and I like that visual of stepping between you and your fantasy of the other person. First, you let your relationship with him be real, then you let him bring reality to how you see the other person to take you out of the fantasy. So then it goes on. They were not created to enable you to hurt yourself through them. They were created to create with you. This is the truth that I would interpose between you and your goal of madness. So there again is the stepping between. Be not separate from me, and let not the holy purpose of atonement be lost to you in dreams of vengeance. Relationships in which such dreams are cherished have excluded me. So to the extent the shadow figures enter in, we're shutting him out. Let me enter in the name of God and bring you peace, that you may offer peace to me. So he's in different ways saying the same thing. Let me come in and stand between you and this ridiculous fantasy you have of the other person and bring reality to the whole situation.
And we don't realize the degree to which we relate to other people through the lens of shadow figures. One classic example is a person who didn't get the love that they wanted or needed from a parent, then seeks to pull that kind of love from their romantic partner. And so when they don't feel like they get it, they attack and blame their partner,
They throw a
who's
fit.
somehow, who's confused because they don't understand what's going on here. And the person is just trying to get back at their parent. So they're seeing their partner through the lens of the parent who didn't give them what they needed. And so this is something that is somewhat unconscious, if not mostly unconscious, and yet it completely trips us up. And it causes us so much friction, toxicity, breakups, etc. And so recognizing that here Jesus is, it's like, let me get in the middle of the two of you. Let me guide you in how you see this other person, because I see him or her clearly, and I can help you do the same. And that concept, that idea is amazing. And I dare say, we don't, number one, know that he is willing to do this. And two, we don't call upon him in this way.
Right. And I just want to add a little thing about how if we think he's just a symbol, then how can he bring reality to a situation dominated by fantasies and symbols, right? Because I'm seeing you as a symbol of my parent. But also to add on to what you're saying about the problems it causes and about how unconscious it is, one of the places to spot it is with communication breakdowns. I mean, so often we want to say, who are you talking to? Right. Like, who do you think that's not what I said? And why are we hearing things as if they're coming from somebody else? Why are we talking as if we're talking to someone else? That's the concrete evidence of shadow figures being present.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm feeling tempted to go into like the more of the ways that shadow figures play out in our relationships. But the point here is that no matter how this shows up, Jesus is here to help us, to stand between and to help guide our vision of the other person.
And it really does help to, if you're in the middle of it, to pause for a moment and ask him to step between you and your fantasies. It does help. I mean, it would be impossible to be in a lot of the tussles we get into if Jesus was physically sitting in between us.
Right.
Right. So if we imagine him there, which the Course says he is, then to the extent we make that real to us, it will be impossible to stay in the argument.
Yeah, that's a really good practice, to imagine that he's sitting there. And how differently would you speak to the other person if you really believed that he was sitting there? And he says that he is. And so if we could think of ourselves when we're in these conversations, like, how would we do it differently if Jesus were here? How would we think of this person differently if Jesus were right beside us, and that can really shift us out of some of those negative patterns.
Yeah, right. To think, well, he is.
To think, well, he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next one that we have here, I think a lot of people watching or listening might find a bit of a surprise. In chapter 4, there's a section called the devoted teacher, where Jesus says that he wants to be a substitute for our ego. What does he mean by that?
Yeah. Well, in the last few years, I think I've gained a better understanding of what he means by that. So, what he says is, I will substitute for your ego, if you will, but never for your spirit. A father can safely leave a child with an elder brother who has shown himself responsible, but this involves no confusion about the child's origin. The brother can protect the child's body and his ego, which are very closely associated, but he does not confuse himself with the father because he does this, although the child may. So he doesn't define what he means by substitute for your ego, but then he goes into a whole, basically it's a babysitter image, right? You can, a father can
Feels
leave a little
appropriate,
kid.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
With us.
Child with an elder brother. So he's basically saying he's playing babysitter. What does the babysitter do? Takes care of, protects. Now, the implication is if by being our babysitter, he's substituting for our ego, we normally give the babysitter role to the ego, right? We think you take care of me, you protect me, you keep me safe. And what he's saying here is he can do that instead of the ego if we give him that function. So all the leaning we do on our ego to sort of guide us through the world and, look out for us and make sure we stay safe, he's saying he can substitute for that and do that instead. And presumably he does a way better job of that. I mean, who would you rather leave your child in the care of, an ego or Jesus?
Right. And this is something that those who have been around the circle for a while have to forgive me, because this is a bit of a bugaboo for me. I think that oftentimes in the spiritual community and even in the course community, we confuse and conflate the ego with critical thinking. And we think that we need to lean on the ego in order to help guide us through the lowercase r realities of the world and protect us in some ways, as a babysitter would protect a child. But that's not the case. In the course, the ego is always vicious. It's always out to attack. It's always out to hurt you. And so the only thing to do with it is to reject it. And so when you hear that, you think, okay, well then who's going to guide me through the world? How do I find my keys? Where do I know how to park? How do I avoid all the dangers of et cetera, et cetera? Who's going to do that for me? Because that's the role that we've given the ego. And I love this so much because he says, I can do that for you too. So once again, he is offering to step into this place that we don't normally ascribe to him.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you think about how your ego takes care of you and guides you and protects you, it
Right.
does a terrible job.
Yeah.
And we spend a lot of our time making sure we're safe from things that we don't need to be safe from. Like the classic example in a course context is when Helen was so terrified of a union strike that would involve the elevator operators, so that there wouldn't be an elevator operator in her building, and her husband would have to, and she would have to take the stairs if one was up and the other was down. She was so terrified of this that she moved them to a hotel where they stayed for a couple of weeks, not realizing the strike had never happened. Right. And that's such a great example of how our ego takes care of us.
Yeah.
It
I
does a
know.
bad job.
It's such a good point. Like, if that's the ego will always tell you the other person's wrong, they're a sinner, you're a sinner, you're pathetic, you're frail, they deserve your attack. If this is how the ego takes care of us, no thanks. And yet it's the crutch we feel that we need to lean on, or we're going to be a doormat in the world. And so I love what he says here. Like he can fill that role for us. He can do it better, and our behaviors and our thinking will be much wiser and more loving as a result if we just
Yeah.
let him through that door.
And aside from all the non-existent dangers the ego wants to protect us from, there are tons of stories out there of people being protected from things they could never have known about through spiritual guidance.
Right. And here's where we can bring up Miracle Principle 21, where he says that he will help us through spiritual and physical dangers. And so we lean on him and we can trust that he can move us through those as well.
Right. Right.
Okay, we're doing okay on time, but our last point to bring up here is that Jesus wants to help us meditate. So here at the Circle, we talk a lot about course-based meditation, but it's not something that you hear much about from students. For those who are in the workbook, today is lesson 67, Love Created Me Like Itself. He's asking you to meditate in that lesson. But again, we don't talk about meditation much. And I think part of the reason why is because we don't think we're really all that good at it. And so this is another area where Jesus wants to step in and help. So what does he say about being able to help us with meditation?
Yeah, I think probably the main reason, just as an aside, we don't talk about it is the word's not used much in the course. Although it was used in the original dictation in the early chapters of the text. We've restored those references in the CE.
It was just a point of clarification. The word meditation was changed to what?
Different words. Like originally, Jesus said, meditation is a collaborative venture. The original editors of the course changed that to salvation is a collaborative venture. Other places were just removed, things like that. That's why your meditations have frightened you became that's why your thoughts have frightened you. Mm-hmm. So they just, if it was something you could point to in the world, they tended to take it out or change it. And meditation, you can point to someone saying they're meditating, right? Anyway, there's a real pattern around this. In lesson 221 in the workbook, he basically says, while you're waiting for God, I'm waiting with you. We'll wait together for God in your meditation. In lesson, I think it's 70, so coming right up, he says that in your meditation, if it helps you, think of me holding your hand and leading you. And for the metaphor people, he says, and I assure you, this will be no idle fantasy. So he's saying he'll really be there. Mm-hmm. And then there's this place that we want to talk about here, which is now in chapter 4 of the CE, where Helen was having a fear reaction to her meditations. And she asked, like, what should I do about this? And what he says is this: the reason for the fear reaction is quite apparent. You have not yet been able to suspend judgment, so to set aside all her judgments while she's meditating, and have merely succeeded in weakening your control over it. So now, rather than just setting them aside, she's backed away sort of halfway, and now they're still there, but she's lost control over them. So while she's having a meditation, she's having out of control judgments, like kind of mental Tourette's. Okay. He says, since you have an unfortunate tendency to be self-punishing, you believe that control of judgment is a self-preserving function, obviously, and therefore require it as a necessary defense of yourself. Weakening this defense deliberately is thus perceived as dangerous vulnerability, which frightens you. You can see why, if suddenly your head's full of nasty judgments that you're not in control of, you're going to be afraid. He says, Bill was right that you should ask before attempting it, meaning meditation. Again, it would be very unwise to try it before we can do it together, as I told you last night. And he emphasized, we can do it together. I assure you, I will be vigilant in identifying the right time. And as I told you very clearly, next time we will do it together. I did not tell you when that will be because I do not know. You will tell me that, but may not recognize that you have done so. So something deep in her mind that she's not conscious of will tell him, I'm ready now. That is why you need me to relay your own message back to you. When we are both ready, it cannot be fearful. So there's the two-way readiness, just her and Helen.
Mm-hmm.
That whole thing is so fascinating.
Yeah, it on 1,000 levels. The most interesting thing to me about this, apart from just how willing he is to help us with meditation, which means that meditation is important to him, number one. Number
Mm-hmm.
two is that there's something in our subconscious that speaks to him somehow,
Mm-hmm. Tells him when we're ready.
tells him when we're ready, and then he's willing and ready to join with us at that point. And so there's just so much going on there that's truly interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can see why meditating, if you're afraid of your out of control judgments, you can see why meditating with him. It's like an example that I thought of, or analogy is if you're afraid of what your right hand will do, like if you're afraid it's going to slap somebody, and there are things where people's two hemispheres of their brains are disconnected and one hand will do things that are kind of aggressive outside that person's control, apparently. Well, then what better thing to do than sit down with someone you trust who will hold your hand?
Yeah, and he also says, not in relation to this point, but if you don't believe it, just keep doing it and you'll be proven that it's true. And this is something that fits that bill, because if you are not meditating because, like Helen or some version of Helen, you can't control your bucking bronco mind, then just knowing that he's willing to sit with you and be part of the process, if you call upon him and it's slowly but surely begins to work for you, this has been my personal experience, you realize, oh, what do you know? He really is there and he really is helping, because you can see the change within yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And that line, I assure you, this will be no idle fantasy. He's saying in the most explicit terms he can, I will really be there. It's not just your imagination.
Yeah. Okay, so we really are running out of time,
Okay.
but we've gotten through the five things that we've highlighted in terms of what Jesus can do for us. If someone is listening or watching and they're thinking, okay, I didn't know that Jesus could do all of this, but I want to bring him more to the center of my life, where would you recommend that they start?
You know, I think that in looking at these very many ways in which the Course says he can help us, we can relate to him, I think the big message I get from the whole thing is this is not a simple one dimensional thing. This is not like a vending machine with three items in it. This is a complex, full fledged relationship that he's offering us. And I think the the gist of it, which is the place to start and the place to end, is just treat him like you might say the perfectly accepting, wise therapist slash teacher slash friend who is there to listen to however long you want to ramble or complain or celebrate or be excited or whatever. And he's there to help in whatever way you need, in all the different elements along the path. Help you with your decisions, help you with your function of being a miracle worker, help you meditate, help you dive into your unconscious and face your ego, you know, all of it. So don't put the relationship in a box. Real relationships are complex and multifaceted, and this is a real relationship. So just start talking to him as someone who is there, who is totally accepting, but also completely wise. So he can listen and accept you, but he can also guide you wisely.
And that's no idle fantasy, as
Right.
he says, and as we've been repeating. He is there, really there, for all of these things.
Right.
And how much are we relying on that? How much are we leaning on him? And how much are we leaning on our own judgments and ego-based decision making, right?
Right. I think a big roadblock for us is we just don't tend to hear him very well. But my experience is that if we keep asking and keep opening ourselves, most all of us have experiences where we get guidance that ends up being confirmed that we had no way of knowing. Or we might have a dream where a very vivid one where it seemed like he was really there, or an experience in meditation or something. I think he finds ways to get through to us. And this is another thing. I mean, I often talk about how there are different kinds of paranormal experiences that no one talks about. So we don't know that there's this whole category that exists. I think the category of experiences of Jesus that seem like real experiences is one of those things in the world that's a real category of human experience on this planet among people of all faiths is quite striking. Um, and we don't really study it. There's been some study by some people, but it's a whole category of human experience the world over that affects millions and millions of people. So it's not like him being there for us in some way that feels real is some out of the ordinary thing. It's an ordinary thing.
Yeah, and it's also, you can't hear if you don't ask. And how much are we asking him throughout the day to be with us and to participate in our decision making and to
Right.
help us see our colleagues and partners and even strangers on the internet with love? How much are we leaning on him? And so if we say, well, I don't really lean on him because I don't really hear him, keep asking.
Keep asking, keep talking. You open a channel that gets more and more open.
Right. So,
Okay.
we've covered our five. So, but as we said in the beginning, there's just countless ways
This
that
is the
he's
smallest tip of the iceberg.
right. I mean, like the smallest pinhead of the
Yeah.
iceberg.
Yeah.
So it was hard for both of us to narrow it down to five. Was there anything else in the list that you created that you wanted to speak to specifically here that we didn't cover? And I know we're really bearing
Yeah,
down
I
onto
know
the
there
hour
were
here, but
things I wanted to mention, but given the late time, I think I'm going to pass. Just I think it's good that we said there is so much more. This is a major part of the course's teaching.
well, one thing that you had mentioned to me along that line was that the whole scraps of meanness bit, you have to talk about that because that's worth going over the hour for because it affects literally all of us.
Yeah, well, I was just reading this morning, so it was up for me because of my daily reading. He paints this picture in chapter 4 in the text where we have thousands of scraps of meanness, and they build a wall, and that wall prevents God from entering. Okay. Then he says basically, watch your mind for the scraps of meanness so that you can ask me to step around the wall. So he can join us on our side of the wall and help us let go of the scraps, help us take some of the bricks out of the wall, right? And then God can enter. And when he does, Jesus says, you will be ready to help me make other minds ready for him. And part of the watching our mind is being really, he says, be very honest about what you're asking for we must hide nothing from each other.
What a beautiful idea
Yeah.
that we have these calcified scraps of meanness and he's there not judging them, just saying, yep, I know they're there and I can dismantle them with you, and together we can do this. We can advance on the path, get to God, share the peace, share the love, etc. All that we have to do is lean on him and rely on him, believe that he's there, and he can help us. He can help us do
Yeah.
all of this. And I'll just say very quickly here at the end, You know, so much of what we associate with Jesus is, at least if you grew up in traditional church, is the figure who we exalt and put on high but for the fact that he was God's son. I mean, I love in the course everybody's God's son, so that's not such a special thing. But what we laud Jesus for is for his ability to help us see ourselves and our brothers truly. Like, he looked on everyone and saw the face of God, and that's what he can help us do too. And so it's not about just praising him, it's about allowing him to work through us to achieve peace, love, and union and harmony in the world. It's completely different and unbelievably beautiful, and it's exactly what we need in the world right now.
Yeah. Just this one last line he says about himself. He says, walking with him is just as natural as walking with a brother whom you knew since you were born, for such indeed he is. We need to get to that place where we experience it as this is completely natural. This is not weird. This is not supernatural. It's natural.
Yeah. And when people say, how did the world get the way that it is today? How do we go so off track? We got so off track because we stopped seeing each other through this lens. And so what we can do now is lean on him to get us back. And I do think that is the thing that will do nothing less than save humanity itself. So, Robert, thank you, as always, for yet another gorgeous conversation on
We
yet
need to do more
another.
in this topic, don't we?
We can't. This is an endless well. Um,
Yeah, but this is a topic we need to do more on. Anyway.
well, we will be doing more. Thank you for that tee up to the segue of
It
Holy
wasn't meant to
Week.
be that.
Yeah, we are. Again, I can't say enough about how significant this is for us here at the Circle, and we hope for you too, to have Holy Week be seen through the wisdom and through the teachings of A Course in Miracles. We are going to have an extraordinary time together where we gather 5 days over the course of Holy Week, again culminating in our Easter Sunday service. And we will be sharing the events of those days through the teachings and through the lens of the course. And so we really hope that you will join us for that. And again, you can find the information at circleofa.org/events. Robert, I will see you. We will all see you again for another conversation. We do these every other Monday. And so we'll see you next time. Bye for now.